Demand-Avoidance Phenomena, in brackets, pathological or extreme demand avoidance, close brackets, and an introduction to a transactional stress model, um, by Richard Woods at London Southbank University PhD student. So, a bit about myself. I am autistic. I was diagnosed with autism in 2012, and I do meet Elizabeth Newton's PDA profile, but I'm not emotionally attached to it. Um, I actively reflect upon how my values shape my understanding of autism and how autism is constructed, and likewise PDA. My agenda is for at least good quality scientific method-based research and practice, and I'm going to be quite clear. This is my interpretation of the PDA literature, and my interpretation of PDA, and some others might disagree with me. So yes, I do have a few conflicts of interest. So I have been developing various PDA tools, such as the Pathological Demand-Avoidance belief scale, and I do derive some income from delivering PDA training sessions. And I am reluctantly advocating for PDA to be diagnosed as a standalone construct. Um, so, a brief introduction. I will be covering the core PDA criteria, and I will be giving examples of how PDA represents trauma and people asserting their self-agency. And before I'll be discussing transactional stress and what that means for PDA, and then I will be providing a couple of models for PDA, and then finally equating transactional stress with other models for PDA. So yeah, this is the core 5 PDA traits which I'm using for my PDA model. These are slightly reworded to try and be non-pathologizing, and the statistics for if the traits are universal within the PDA population are taken from Elizabeth Newton's 2003 article. These traits are avoidance of everyday demands, comfortable in role-playing pretense, consistent mood swings, impulsivity, frequent intense actions, and social avoidance behaviours. I'm still reflecting on the wording of them. So, about 3 years ago, I did a content analysis of items in the main PDA screening tools and diagnostic tools, and it turns out that many of the features are um, indicating a person is either traumatized or highly distressed. So, um, just a brief selection. So, this is the first one is from the Extreme Demand-Avoidance Questionnaire, which is a screening tool for use with children and young persons. So, it seems as if he or she is distracted from within, and that a person knows what to do to say or upset specific people. Um, the third one is from lax awareness of one's own identity. Um, is from announced 2016, so that's for the 11 revised Peter Disco questions. The Disco is a semi-structured interview created by the National Autistic Society for use with diagnosing autism. And the final one is from the Extreme Demand Avoidance Questionnaire for adults, which is a self-report version for adults um, looking for PDA. So the item is I am driven by the need to be in charge. These three examples are behaviours that any person will use to assert their self-agency. So yeah, I complain about the illness or physically incapacitate or physical incapacity to avoid a request or demand. Attempts to negotiate better terms with adults and apparently manipulative behaviour. I'd point out you kind of would want people and children to be able to negotiate better terms with adults. It's kind of expected within neoliberal culture. Um, so moving on to transactional stress. So um, what that means is it stresses transactional with the environment that a person's in, and that a person becomes stressed when a stressor exceeds our resources of our coping mechanisms. So a person finds the situation taxing. Sorry, I don't know why it's done that. So yeah, the key to reducing someone's stress levels is to um, allow a person to develop better coping mechanisms and to deal with the stress. Um, so yeah, 2/3 of distress behaviour tends to be triggered by demands or questions of others. And the bottom bit is a quote from the DSM-5, which is the American Diagnostic manual. and it's from criteria C for autism on page 50 of the book. So, yeah, symptoms must be present in the early developmental periods, but in brackets, but may not become fully manifest until social demands exceed limited capacities or may be masked by learned strategies in later life. Close brackets. Um, what this means is that it's got a term in that's related towards transactional stress. So basically, it means that autism may not become manifest or expressed in a person until demands placed upon them exceeds their coping mechanisms, which is exactly what the definition of transactional stress is used up here is. So yeah, the reason I'm saying this is because often PDA is modelled with having deficits. So basically, a person has a multi-faulty aspects to them, um, and if you're doing that, you're not actually reflecting modern understandings of autism. So yeah, so taking the transactional stress um, model is more in line with modern understandings of autism, and I need to be quite clear about that. So um, yeah, moving on. So this is a diagram from the PDA Society. I'm not entirely happy with it, but it's quite useful for showing how demand avoidance features tend to often they kind of escalate in kind of extremes or kind of severity depending on how stressed a person is or into how successful their attempts at having demands removed on them are. So down at the bottom, you have kind of using distraction or excuses or procrastination, going up to kind of physically incapacitations or disassociating to fantasy, kind of just making conversations just meaningless. To moving on to kind of taking control or complete compliance, and to full on kind of panic. To kind of being kind of self-harming, threats of self-harm, aggression, or kind of running away. Um, and these may not kind of they may when someone is kind of being stressed due to aversive demands, they can escalate quite quickly on. They can kind of skip levels, so that needs to be said. So this is a generic negative reinforcement cycle that I have developed, but is based upon the PDA literature and broader mental health literature. So what you have is a demand which can be either internal or external in nature. That will lead to the person experiencing anxiety or distress, and that will then lead to a person expressing some kind of avoidance behaviour to that demand. And the avoidance behaviour can either be rational or irrational in nature, and then they'll get some kind of temporary relief from that demand. And the reason for that is that the avoidance behaviour is designed to change the nature of the environment they're in. So it either completely removes the demand, or it reduces it enough to reduce anxiety and stress sufficiently. Um, so what that means is turn you can then create a three-dimensional model for PDA. So what I've done here is this is basically how often demand avoidance features are expressed over time, over over a particular time period. So this could be per day or per week or per year. Down here is kind of intensity to stress features here. So this is literally this diagram here. So closer towards the more calm you are to kind of the less kind of extreme, and I am using kind of extreme in quotation marks. The kind of features being expressed to, so kind of full on panic features will be kind of close down towards this axis, this area here, and the final axis is kind of manipulative strategic social avoidance behaviour. So the reason for this is because the more stressed a person is, the more highly aroused they are, the less kind of able they are to be processing information kind of normally. So when you're more highly aroused you are, you'll be processing information more slowly and generally more emotively than when you're kind of lowly aroused. So if it's manipulative, the person tends to be less stressed and less highly aroused. And but the more highly aroused, the more compulsive the social avoidance features will be, and therefore more strategic. So down here on the bottom right is the threshold for which basically these demand avoidance features are pathologized as a disorder. So this is taken from page 21 of the DSM-5, which so the quote is its disturbance causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupation, or other important areas of functioning. So important areas of functioning are basically settings or situations in which demand avoidance are expressed in. So this can be either be education, such as school, work, could be at home with the family, or kind of more social with peers. And it can also be in terms of kind of activities of daily living. So like are your avoidance are kind of like looking after yourself and like kind of getting up, and then ones like washing, bathing, and making food, etc. Um, Finally, you can um, create a transactional stress developmental model for PDA. So this basically combines the demand management cycle with another developmental model. Um, so what you have here is PDA as experience as a kind of way of being human, and that kind of leads into the situations a person experiences. So kind of either aversive situations or missed developmental opportunities, and that can interact in many different ways. But top box basically got kind of delayed kind of communication, other delays towards development, to issues with kind of developing functional skills, and can kind of lead to depression and trauma being experienced. The box on the right hand side has the core five PDA traits present, and the box at the bottom is distress or anxiety. Um, these matter because, for example, if you're having rapid mood changes, that can lead to how you experience people and the type of interaction you'd like to experience. And that can then, because people are unlikely to interact with you often if you have rapid mood changes, it can be quite off-putting if you're going from times being nice to being relatively hostile. It'll be off-putting, so people are unlikely to interact with you well or often in that situation. That can lead to kind of missed social opportunities and further developing kind of social skills and other bits and pieces. And um, yeah, it's a quite. I like this model. I will do because I made it, but yeah, I think it's quite useful, and it explains how having the demand avoidance features can lead to people having social communication issues. So this is the final model. What this means is that you can equate a transactional stress model for PDA with models which intrinsically pathologize PDA and take a medical model disability approach. So what I've done here is at the bottom on the x-axis you have internalizer features which are mainly come from role-playing pretense, and the externalizer features is basically everything else. So there's the social avoidance features, which include kind of running away, making excuses, incapacitating yourself to the kind of the full-on kind of panic, flight kind of response is going on to it. The y-axis is the number of settings in which demand avoidance features are seen in. So these will be kind of important areas of functioning, kind of being a y-axis. So, and this would be the amount of settings which these features are expressed in over a 12-month time period, and that's quite important because it allows a person to meet the Equality Act's definition of disability in the UK, which, paraphrasing, is substantial impairment over a 12-month time period. And also, if you look at the DSM-5, most of the criteria for disorders will have these features must be expressed over an X time period, which is normally at least 6 months or something like that. So down here on the y-axis, you've got zero number of kind of impairment, settings which demand voice features are seen in over time. So that would be kind of be transdiagnostic to at least one setting over 12-month time periods. So this would be the kind of threshold for which demand avoidance features start to be pathologized as part of disorder, and it's kind of what could be called mild PDA, or equivalent to the threshold for the extreme demand avoidance questionnaire, or the DSM-5 OCD, or the DSM-5 oppositional defiance disorder threshold. So the second one would equate to where demand avoidance features are seen in at least two settings over a 12-month time period, and that would equate to kind of moderate PDA, which is equivalent to the DSM-5 ADHD diagnostic threshold. And the final one is the top one, which is demand avoidance features are seen in at least three different settings over a 12-month time period. And that would equate to severe PDA or the DSM-5 autism criteria, or, for example, health psychology's PDA definitions for what they would call extreme demand avoidance. So yeah, just going to conclude it. Focus on PDAs has been about demand avoidance. Hence, we can use transactional stress model for PDA, and more accurately, it kind of fits our understanding of autism than conceptualizing PDA with deficits. And taking this outlook, intrinsically adopts a social model neurodiversity values of non-pathologizing and inclusion, and finally, you can equate it to other models. I need to quickly point out that the reason why you can equate transactional stress with these other diagnostic thresholds is because the more distressed or stressed a person is, the more settings they should be expressed demand avoidance features in. So you can start off with a transactional stress model down here, and the more stressed a person is over a 12-month time period, the more settings they will be showing demand avoidance features in. That's the assumption to it. So yeah, I'm going to end with these are my contact details. If you contact me, there's my email address, my Twitter handle, and my ResearchGate profile, which has links to kind of all my kind of talks and stuff. And these are references which I'm not going to linger on loads because it's a very short slide, and I'm going to stop the recording. So yeah, thank you, and I hope you come and watch the next video. Okay, bye.